Hi, so I'm Kaye. I am also known as Jamo in the family, Nimale. I'm the middle sister and the middle daughter of Boba. So Boba was a dutiful father, and he always tried his best to raise us. And because of him and my mom, I can say that my brothers and we had a good life. My father was a humble man, and he always wished he had done more for us and his community. I was always learning from him, inspired by his humility, his acts of kindness, his loyalty, his love for the written word, and his faith in meditation. So the first part I want to talk about was Ba's love for the English language and how he had connected the dots for me. If you know Ba, you know that he used to carry an English language arts book wherever he went. He tried to always better himself in his writing, and especially in his grammar. He talked in idioms all the time, like corny ones. She's a peach. And I would say, she's a peach? Bah, that's not what peaches mean these days. She's a peach. Oh, she's darling. She's great. And that's kind of an old idiom. Or he'd say, oh, I'm in a pickle. And I'd say, bah, wrong usage again. I'm in a pickle, meaning, oh, I'm in a difficult situation, but that's so old school. And I believe that part of my success of my Burglish program that some of you know about, which airs on Voice of America part-time, as well as, sorry, now I'm plugging my channel out, as well as on YouTube and Facebook, is due to my father, in which I teach American English and slang to a Burmese and foreign audience. Ba used to talk to me in idioms, and I used to reply in slang. I'd say, Ba, they don't say he's the top banana, which means, old school, it means he's so good, he's the top banana. And I'd say, no, they say he's the GOAT, he's the greatest of all time, like Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, he's the GOAT. Ba was the GOAT for us. I was always teasing, yet learning from him. From when I first stepped foot on US soil to the last weeks I got to spend with my father as he laid on his dying bed. There was political instability in Myanmar in the late 80s and early 90s, and schools were shutting down. So my father left to the United States so he can give us three a better life. He later brought us, my mom, my brothers, and me from Myanmar to the United States with the little knowledge that he had and without much money. I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old when we moved to the US, and my earliest memory of the States were the huge pavements, crowds of people, and street signs. Coming from Myanmar and not knowing the English language, I remember how scared I was of getting lost. So my dad taught me a trick. He said, how can you be scared? You're afraid of getting lost? That's not a real fear. If you know how to read, if you know how to talk to people, you will never be afraid. And with that, my love for books and the written language began. It was because of the spark and push he gave me. My fear of getting lost was forever forgotten, and in fact today, I feel as if I'm always trying to get lost in different cities around the world, or even in our backyard, New York City. The second part I want to talk about is his loyalty and how we, his children, have also found refuge in his community of friends that he called family. You guys. So for the non-Burmese people here, who I'm so thankful that we have join us, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Myanmar. So when it comes to generosity, few countries can match Myanmar and its people. And I promise you it's not me saying this, but Myanmar came out as the most generous country for 3 years in a row, according to the World Giving Index and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So my father loved being part of this generous Myanmar community who have helped us, and which is most apparent now, especially seeing all of you here. They've helped my mom and my family when we were at our most despair. Through the friends he has built from Temple to his work at the UN, people have come out to offer us a helping hand. There are so many of you who we are indebted to, and I'm sorry if I missed a few names, but Auntie Wendy, Uncle Chubby and their family, Auntie Mi, Gojan, Upao. You've welcomed my father as their son and brother, and in turn have adopted his 3 children and my mom as your own. You opened your home to my father, and that is how we started our lives in the United States. We're forever grateful. Ba was loyal to the people he loved, and it is evident by seeing his 30-year track record at the United Nations. His colleagues were his family, and Ba even asked about them on his deathbed. So I remember telling him about the comments that you guys had written on social media, and he would just smile. When he was working at the UN, I remembered how he didn't like football, but he would memorize the scores of football games the night before and the names of football players so he could join in on conversations at the cafeteria. He enjoyed his work mainly because he enjoyed his colleagues and he felt at home with them. In Buddhism, there's a beautiful word called Sangha or Thanga, which means the community of monks, nuns, and lay people who are devout in their practice. Over time, that beautiful word, to me, has evolved to the people who support one another. My father's friends from the temple have been bringing energy to him, healing him for so many years. Today, it is all of you that my family has relied on for these preparations and the traditions for Baba's death. A couple of names more, but you are all in our hearts, if I missed a few. Auntie Tita is a friend from the temple who just showed up at our doorsteps when we hadn't seen her in years. For me, I hadn't seen her in nearly 2 decades. She heard news of my dad's sickness and meditated with him every day for the last 3 weeks at the hospital to keep him on track from the pain. Auntie Oma, my mom's friend from Florida, just drove up one day to console my mom and dad. Auntie Cherry Leibai came every weekend from Jersey. Uzaminthane and his family. You even brought a Buddhist monk to pray with us at the hospital. And now all of you. Auntie A, Auntie Pyong, everyone. I'm looking at all of you. Lastly, in speaking of loyalty, Auntie Mi Myatsan has watched us when we were kids, when I was 5, and yet she still remains by our side when we are adults. Auntie Mimi rushed to the hospital to be by my mom and my dad when my father became unconscious, and she was with us during the nights and the moment he passed. So it was the 6 of us, but then after my dad left, it was the 5 of us. And the loyalty of the Burmese Myanmar Mafia is unbreakable. There are so many to name who have been so crucial to us, and you all have offered us so much. And I apologize again if I missed any of you. My dad was loyal to the people he loved, and seeing him in his last days made me realize how my dad and my mom's loyalty and love for one another was very deep. And if you know them, you knew that growing up they fought a lot. But it was friendship that evolved into a love that couldn't break. And I have learned that when you are looking for a life partner, you need to find someone who's your best friend and who will always have your back. My mom had his back, advocating for him at the hospital through insurance policies and doctor's prognosis, and my dad always supported her in every endeavor. Seeing everyone today, I am reminded of how fortunate my brothers and I are to have been surrounded by this beautiful community who have always been there for me and my family in our deepest time of despair, lending a hand, building friendships. So thank you for that. That one was for you. The third and last part I want to talk about is my time with Baba in his last days and how his death had taught me the most vital lesson. We are all mortal, and we must know the important things in our lives and look at death as inevitable. My father was in the hospital for nearly 3 months. There were quite a few scares, and Baba fought hard to live, even though his prognosis was fatal. He was in pain, and his organs were shutting down. His pain was so bad that earlier on in September last month, we thought that was the last of him. The wincing cries and pain struck him every 3 minutes for 30 seconds, 20 times an hour, 480 times within 24 hours, and he cried and winced throughout the 4 days. He couldn't sleep, and we were around his bedside, crying throughout the nights and days. Many of you came and visited him at the hospital and saw him in that. The nurses and doctors all thought that by the 4th day, it would be his last day, and they were shocked to see him alive the next day, sitting up. Everyone was astonished that his will to live was so strong. His organs were shutting down one by one, and the blood infections increased. The medications and antibiotics increased, yet my father was not giving up. His body was weak and struggling. The doctors wanted to take him off dialysis and wanted him to go sooner, but he didn't want to. So my mom fought hard with the doctors to not shift him anywhere else and get the treatment he needed. She continued meditating and praying with him harder and put on these meditations and sermons for him throughout the days and nights at the hospitals, sometimes pretty loud, so he would just listen and meditate on the pain. In the sutras, the Burmese scripture, Buddha had extolled meditation on death as the supreme meditation. My father at the hospital would just concentrate on his breathing throughout the pain. Ba, through his meditation, knew when he was going to die. Early Friday morning on October 7th, last week, 3 days before he died, he asked my mom to stay the night and was asking the nurses for us in his raspy, hoarse voice when she and I went out just a bit to get lunch. He wouldn't let go of my mom's hand, and he asked her to do a sunjoy. A sunjoy for him is a customary tradition in Buddhism to serve monks lunch for the death of someone they know. He became unconscious that night while the whole family was there. I was watching him all day, and his eyes were heavy, and he was not talking anymore. He waited for all of us to be there, the 4 of us, and then went unconscious that Friday evening with a nod and a stare. Boba, I realized, wasn't resisting death anymore. He was accepting his fate and putting his energy into meditation for the next life. He was unconscious for the next 3 days and died on his eldest son's arm on Monday, October 10th at 1:25 p.m., letting out a big sigh. I have learned that death represents renewal, and it is inseparable from life. We as a society have become so disconnected from death that it has caused friction in our lives. When we fail to look at death, we are settling for short-sighted desires and other people's goals for us. Seeing Ba every day these last weeks at the hospital had brought a lot of clarity in my life, realizing that life is short and to value time is the greatest gift that we all have. To understand what we want with this time, the purpose we want for our lives, and the people and peace we want around us should be things that we think of and prepare for. To know what we want without thinking of other people's perceptions. What would they think? And just following our own calling. That's the true freedom. Knowing that death is there for all of us is ultimately freeing, because it shows us that there's nothing to mask and that there's an urgency to follow our passions and purposes. Doing what you love without thinking of others' perceptions is the ultimate freedom. I hope your experiences are intensified every day and you know what to cherish: family, your purpose, goals in life, friends, anything else that may be. Mortality, death, connects us all, and I hope through my father's experience you feel connected to yours as your life and death guide you in your decisions and calling. Thank you.